4315997.
Every living creature in the world dies alone.
I'd like to tell you a story about a young man whose life was destroyed by the instruments of fear.
You are the fucking Antichrist.
Shut up!
What's feces? Baby mice. Oh.
I hope that when the world comes to an end, I can breathe a sigh of relief, because there will be so much to look forward to.
The first time I came into contact with Donnie Darko was a friend of mine who we go to the cinema quite regularly together and often see quite strange and unusual films. Asked me if I wanted to go and see it, and to be honest I'd never heard about it, never heard anything about it at all, and we went on like a Sunday afternoon, boiling hot outside. But we went and I was just blown away. We had to go and have a drink afterwards and have a talk about it because it was just so incredible.
I just saw this DVD and I thought, well, I never heard of that. What is it? Looked at it, saw it had Drew Barrymore in it. That was enough for me. Took it home and watched it. It was a Sunday morning, expecting this kind of teen slasher movie, which is how it was sold on the back of the American DVD. And, you know, nothing like that, just completely blown away by it. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before.
It was a movie that we were kind of fully behind, but in some senses the magazine missed. We could have done more with it. We gave it 5 stars, but possibly it still, even for us, was kind of under the radar.
I think I went to one of the first screenings, and it was kind of weird because I'm into film anyway, but with Donnie Darko there was something quite different with the film, the way that it was shot, so the way that the story went, like I didn't quite understand it. So it was going to be one of those films where you've got to go back and watch it again. But I was quite into it because I could really relate to the character of Donnie being like a lonely sort of guy within a family and not being understood at school and that kind of thing.
I was pretty blown away by the movie. I didn't think it was, a completely flawless film, but I did think it was a remarkable film and a very unusual film, and kind of really gives you a lot to think about. And I could see that it did have the potential to be, in its own way, phenomenal.
The film's about growing up and sort of trying to find your own answers to life rather than learning other people's answers, really.
Suits don't make a difference.
Gothic bunnies.
Parallel universe.
Growing up.
Shut up!
Jet planes falling through roofs.
It's a very troubled passage through time and space by someone who may or may not be psychotic.
Donnie is the embodiment of Jesus. The religious imagery in the film is so important. The images of the cross above the school. Charita, the young girl, is the embodiment of angelic innocence, and I believe she is an angel in the film, and is much more important to the film than the first impressions would have you believe. I think Donnie died to save our souls. He died to save a corrupted universe, which Grandma Death writes about in her book. Incidentally, she used to be a nun as well, which is another religious link. So I think the imagery is very strong.
The search for God.
Love. The theory of time travel.
It's about everything.
Fear, love, and everything in between.
I think the film is about second chances. It's about escaping fate and being given a second chance to do something with your life. In the case of Donnie Darko, he gets 28 days grace period to do something different, to change the people of Middlesex and for the better. And he does that. So you can make a difference when you're given that second chance, even if ultimately you have to die.
I think it's about a confused young man that's faced with a lot of choices. Some of those choices are for good and some are for bad, and in the end, despite not having all the info he needs, he makes the right choice.
Time travel.
Destiny.
being able to die happy.
Hope.
It's about his sacrifice and what he learns about time travel to save the world and the people in it that he loves.
I don't know.
A troubled teenager. Fate.
Darkness.
On the surface, it's literally about a guy who has schizophrenia and dealing with that, and that's something that isn't, you know, I think sometimes gets forgotten about. But I think the impression that you come away with is it's a film that's about alienation.
Suits don't make a difference, in that everybody has a role to play. Everybody, no matter how insignificant or small or large as a role in the film, has a role to play as such. And at the end, really, it doesn't matter what role they're playing. It all comes to the same thing, someone saving the world, or in this case, Donnie Darko's world.
Original.
Unforgettable.
Tangible.
And love and fear.
Wow, what's the film about? I think it's about possibilities. I think it's about the unknown, and I think it's about trying to comprehend the unknown.
Where did you come from?
Do you believe in time travel?
Who are you talking to?
Well, I think the director, Richard Kelly, and certainly the producers just think the UK audience got it.
Donnie Darko opened up in America during September 11th, so there was a lot of trouble there, and also I kind of think that some Americans don't understand these really like in-depth sort of films, but the English audience, because it's so in-depth and so powerful, we can talk about it after the film and talk about it when we see it again, over and over again, and just talk about anything to do with it.
Donnie Darko was one of those movies which had those people that had seen it. It was like a rite of initiation. Those people that had seen it became true believers. But because, certainly in the UK, that was maybe someone who'd seen it at an American festival, or maybe someone who had a Region 1 disc, they were few and far between. So it wasn't like you could say, hey, I've got this great movie and it's playing at the local Odeon. So word of mouth was kind of quite slow on it, which meant by the time, almost a year between the US release and the UK release, by the time it hit UK cinemas, there was a whole bunch of people kind of ready to go on about it, who'd heard about it. And that's why, you know, it did really well here, right from the first weekend.
After you watched it, you just want to watch it again, and it really just makes you think. And a lot of films, you can just watch them and then put them to one side and then never speak about them again until in a conversation years later you say, oh yeah, I've seen that film. But with Donnie Darko, you can talk about it a lot. There's a lot of things in the film to discuss.
And the UK audience has just responded to it, and there's no doubt that its cult appeal, which is now international, and an international re-release of the director's cut, is basically thanks to kind of its UK fans. This is where it started. Otherwise, it really would have been a very minor website cult thing.
We're a lot more perceptive audience and a lot more intelligent, and we're kind of not spoon-fed ideals of films that have a beginning, middle, end, and like a resolution, and we kind of like more challenge and not to be patronised by the cinema.
Man, I don't know. I have no idea. I think that maybe I think there's a bit more of an adventurous sensibility in London than there is in the States. I mean, I think that the film's definitely caught on here as well, but I think you guys just got it immediately, whereas it took a while. Maybe it had something to do with the time it was released here, and there wasn't really, maybe people weren't ready to embrace the film as quickly as people in the UK were. I honestly can't put my finger on it, really.
One of the things about British audiences is that they love kind of dark, foreboding kind of narratives, particularly cult films. And it's no surprise really that Donnie Darko has been compared to Trainspotting or Catcher in the Rye, because both of these have kind of quite troubled male characters who are trying to work their way through a kind of gluey, unconventional sense of reality.
I think there's a lot of 80s John Hughes teen movies given a kind of directed by David Lynch. I think that's the point. I think it's like Richard Kelly saying, okay, this is what The Breakfast Club would be like if it was directed by David Lynch. I personally thought that Frank was a kind of wicked spin on E.T. some kind of visitor from outer space with the messages that can't quite communicate, and the kind of link between the two of them, the emotional pain and stuff. I thought it was kind of the other side of the mask for that. So it's those 80 movies that are given a bit of a spin.
I think the most obvious comparison is Catcher in the Rye. Holden Caulfield in that book was pretty similar to Donnie Darko in many respects, just didn't know what he was doing, didn't know where he was going, rebelled because he was crying out for help, didn't trust the adults around him. And you can see the obvious parallels, but there's a whole history of teen movies like Rebel Without a Cause, The Breakfast Club. Even if you watch something like Dawson's Creek, it's just all about people going through these crises when they're 16, 17 years old, saying, what is the world all about? Why am I here? Am I special? Am I lonely? Will I ever be in love? Will people ever love me? And those are universal questions. And there's a whole history of much more basic teen movies than Donnie Darko that do that. With Donnie Darko, I think he had that as the centre of the movie, but then wrapped this horror sci-fi element around that.
When they released the film in America, it was just a kind of a normal release of a film. They kind of treated it as a teen movie with TV teen spots and big adverts, and just made it look like a bad episode of Dawson's Creek. When we saw the film, we saw it as being a lot more to it. I mean, watched the film over and over and over again before we even started coming out with an idea for the marketing campaign, and it was make the creation of an artist called Donnie Darko, who was actually painting rabbits and declaring that the world was going to end in 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes and 12 seconds.
For me, like when I was doing the stickers, totally took up all my time, because I'd take, I don't know how many I was doing, it was like 100 or something like that, and then it'd be like 200 that were individually painted and put out there. That was just the initial sticker to get people used to the rabbit's head and used to the word Donnie Darko. So each of the stickers were individually watercoloured and then put out, so they had that like handmade feel to it. So you'd look at it and think, oh, someone's gone to the extreme of painting that. Why? It's like someone would say, Donnie Darko, what's that? I'd say, it's me. And then just walk away. And a lot of people would encounter that and be pissed up on the street and stuff. And you just walk away and leave them kind of miffed about what it was about. But you'd get, like, I used to do the stickers and then just, in some places, you'd just hang back for a minute. Like, for instance, Piccadilly Circus, I had one spot outside, I think it's Burger King, right next door to Boots. It's a classic spot, people walk past there all the time. But it was interesting just seeing people, I'd do the sticker, then leave it, someone would walk by and look back and then carry on. But it'd be different people, it could be like a builder or something like that, or it'd be someone going to a club. You got a totally different reaction. And I always found that, I always find it, doing stuff out there, you'll always get a different reaction to the work that you're doing. One of the most striking things for me in the film was actually the whole vandalism of the school, and then when the shot pans away, it shows They Made Me Do It, and the teachers, the police, looking at it. For me, as an artist, we use spray paint. It was interesting the way it was written, and it kind of summed up Donnie's attitude to authority, the fact that you're putting the blame on some other force. So for me that was really relevant and actually gave birth to the name of the group, They Made Me Do It.
One of the angles was to create an exhibition called They Made Me Do It, after the moment in the film where Donnie Darko sprays They Made Me Do It on the floor of the school playground. And that gave me the idea of doing an exhibition of graffiti artists, creating work inspired by the film. And the idea was that to keep with the continuity of the countdown, 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, 12 seconds. Each artist had 6 hours, 42 minutes and 12 seconds to paint their canvas inspired by Donnie Darko. The show ran for 28 days in a bar in Shoreditch, Dream Bags, Jaguar shoes. We had the countdown clock counting down the 28 days of the show. We had Frank the mask from the original film hanging in a box, and the director Richard Kelly came to the opening of the show.
Oh my god. It's so crazy.
Yeah, and he loved it. I mean, he was blown away by the fact that I think he was blown away by the fact that all these artists had been inspired by his creation, and I think that was a powerful thing to see artists inspired by your own work.
I thought it was great. I remember seeing people dressed up in costumes. I saw a guy dressed as the man in the red jogging suit, and it was all very overwhelming. Really, I was just I had no idea that the film would be received with that much enthusiasm over in the UK. Pretty shocking to me, actually.
I thought the music was quite interesting, actually, mainly for the scenes. I mean, the bit where he gets out the school bus and walks into school, and it's to Tears for Fears. I mean, it's classic 80s cheese.
Well, I was trying to pick songs that I remember from the 80s that had a lot of dignity, that had aged very well, and I guess there was a lot of post-punk new wave music that actually came out of the UK for the most part. And it's music that captured a feeling that I remember, growing up and, coming back to, like I said, music with dignity.
To have British music kind of, for me, had a lot of relevance, in an American setting. It looked interesting, it made the visuals look interesting as well.
I think when you watch films, it's really important that they grab you from the get-go, and from the very beginning of the movie, the use of all this kind of old 80s music that I never particularly had a special fondness for. They used it in a way that completely grips you from the beginning. It makes The Killing Moon. It's never sounded as good as it did in the opening scene of Donnie Darko.
I think he chose his favourite songs, and songs that when you listen to them lyrically actually represent a lot of what is going on in the film, So in Mad World, when he says, "The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had," completely relevant. In Head Over Heels, when he says, "Funny how time flies," completely relevant to the plot. So he's chosen very well, but also really emotional songs. I mean, actually the opening tune is different in the director's cut to the original version. The original version was Echo and the Bunnymen, and the director's cut is In Excess. But both really highly charged songs, and I think they really reflect the emotions in the movie. They really add to its heart and add to its pain and its its tearjerker status.
When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world.
I think for people new to Donnie Darko, having heard that song everywhere might diminish the impact of hearing it in the movie, because certainly the first time I'd heard that version of the song, it took quite a stunning effect in the movie. Now, of course, I've heard the song possibly too many times, as many people have.
Well, Mad World itself is still one of the biggest selling singles of 2004, let alone 2003. In the UK, we've probably getting on for 750, 800,000 singles, which is really quite remarkable when most weeks a number one single does 50,000. We did in 1 week, we did over 250,000 singles in 1 week at Christmas. So it shows the importance of the Christmas market, and it shows the effect that this record had on people, and the fact that they just rushed out to the shops to get it that week leading up to Christmas, which is usually a time when it's, we're all wearing silly hats and dancing to Slade records.
Wouldn't it be great if this really scary, haunting, weird song makes it to Christmas #1? And there's a real push for it to happen. I'm glad that it happened, but I know by about middle of January everyone was like, okay, enough with Mad World now, we can move on. And when you see the movie again in the director's cut, the Mad World is still brilliant, it still has the same effect, but I tell you, that first time that I saw it, when nobody had heard Mad World before, that was when it was at its best. Now it's kind of, we know the song, but when I didn't know the song, it was even more scary and even more haunting than it is now.
Don't you mind, Tom? Donnie. I know this is gonna sound kind of weird, but Do you know anything about time travel?
Ah, a wormhole with an Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is theoretically a wormhole in space controlled by man.
Donnie Darko changed my life because I was able to look at the world in a different perspective. I became more interested in sciences at school and have become very interested in the theory of time travel.
Donnie Darko is, and you can see from the reaction in the industry, you know, lots of directors like Baz Luhrmann and Peter Weir were calling up Richard Kelly, the director, and saying, love your movie. This is a movie that worked for everyone, but for those people that really appealed to, those people that it changed their life, it was just one of those generational things. So maybe I'm a bit too old myself, but I would have loved to have been a bit younger. It seemed to me one of those movies that inspired a lifelong passion for movies, not just for kind of Richard Kelly and what he'd do next. It was like one of those films to go, oh, that's what movies are capable of. Maybe in a way like Reservoir Dogs did, 10 years beforehand, and and maybe Star Wars did back in 1977. It was just one of those, okay, that's a new experience for me. I've got a relationship with a movie which goes beyond paying 10 quid and going where to eat after 2 hours. And that's I think, for kind of students and for people in their teens, this was a real kind of life-changing experience.
Well, Donnie Darko changed my life because at the time when I saw it, I was going out with a girl for about 6 months who I really loved, and she was down this one weekend and decided to take her to the cinema to go and see the film, pay for the ticket, everything, and she was really miserable with me. And as soon as I started watching the film, I was getting really obsessed with it and into it. And the bit where Gretchen and Donnie go to Donnie's bedroom when he is at his house party, I just looked at them and I thought, that's what a real couple should be, that's what love is. And I actually turned to my girlfriend at the time. I thought to myself, you don't love me or like me anymore. And as she left, as the film ended, it made me think about what I need to do in my life, that I need to do something that means something to me. As that happened, the credits rolling up and she came running up to me and says, oh, hurry up, we've got to go, and laughed at me because she thought I didn't understand the film. And then a couple of days later she dumped me, which was a bit upsetting for me, but made me think that this film showed me the light, showed me that what a relationship should be. And 8 months down the line, I left my job that I was currently in because I wasn't happy with it, and I decided to go back to college and do something I really enjoyed, and that's what Donnie Darko did to me. Made me realise what love is, and that your life's your own and you should get on with it and do what you want to do, whatever makes you happy.
The message there is an almost universal one. Forget the sci-fi element of the story, forget the horror element of the story. The most basic element of the story is it's about a teenage boy who is lonely, who is worried, who is upset, and that is pretty much every teenager who's ever lived. We've all been through that, or we're all going through that. So I think that element of it was the universal appeal, and it wasn't just cult movie fans and sci-fi fans and horror fans who liked the film, because it did have a really basic emotional heart at its centre as well.
I mean, I first watched it and then I went to the next screening and I watched it again and again. I got a copy of the video, watched it again, because there were loads of things in there that were kind of hidden. And like, take for instance the guy in the red tracksuit, you'd watch it and he'd come up in another scene, didn't quite make sense. So you're always following up different things, and towards the end, the way the story ends up relates to something earlier in the film, and you'll always pick that up with the film. So I found myself doing that and getting a little bit obsessed with it. I mean, going out there doing the stickers and then kind of getting into the story and then coming back home from doing the stickers and then watching the film again, it kind of took up your life. You kind of really in there with the character, identifying with the character, and it's one of those films you'll tell someone and say, look, you just got to see it, and they're like, why? I've heard it's shit. But it's one of them films where people see it and they go, wow, that's amazing.
I was waiting for my A-level results, and I remember thinking to myself, it's no fun being a teenager. It's just not really the best time I ever had being a teenager, and it was my final years as a teenager. And then I watched it, and it was pretty neat having a superhero, and I do consider Donnie Darko as a superhero that very much dealt with that issue, the difficulty of being a teenager. In between his, he may speculate about the gender and the sort of asexual nature of Smurfs, but in between that, he does have a lot of food for thought concerning the idea of loneliness and the futility of the search for God if one is to inevitably die alone. I think these are very probably deep sort of questions, but the film never really shies away from asking them. And it sort of does summarize what being a teenager is like. It's difficult, it's boring, it's annoying. Though I never had to contend with the likes of Overgrown Rabbits, it's very much a sort of movie that made me realize that, hey, it's called growing up. I think the experience of Donnie Darko helped that.
Well, I think anytime you write something personal, you hope that other people relate to it and other people connect to the emotion that a character is experiencing, you know. So I just tried to write something that was honest, so it's maybe an honest human experience for a young person, and if that ended up being the kind of experience that other people identify with, and that's great. You know, I was definitely shocked at how deep the film cut. You know, but very happy that it is connected with this many people. Yeah, you know.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces.
Bright and early for the daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere.
These tears are filling up our glasses, no expression, no expression.
Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow.
I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad.
Dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had.
Find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take.
When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world.
Mad world. Mad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. And to feel the way that every child should sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to school and I was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello teacher, tell me what's my lesson. Look right through me, look right through me. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world.
Hey, what's going on? Horrible accident. My neighbor got killed.
What happened?
Got smushed by a jet engine.
You got it?
What was his name?
Donnie Darko.
I remember.
And his name, what the fuck's that about? Donnie Darko, it's weird.